Hi guys, welcome back. We are so excited to be with you guys today. Like always, it's a while until we get
Been a good
our
minute,
next pod
yeah.
in. But I'm Trave if you don't know me,
And I'm Stephanie.
and welcome to Couch Pod.
Yeah.
Today we have a very special guest with us. And honestly, we've been trying to plan this for a little bit.
A long time. It's been a long time coming, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but today's episodes feature someone that's leading both in grace and grit here in SoCal. And her name is Nicky Stade. She's the executive director of Women of SoCal, and her story is one of both faith, strength, and we just want to dive in and have a conversation with her to maybe possibly encourage whoever's
Yeah.
listening to this that is either just trying to find what their calling is, what their purpose is, and trying to get their way back to maybe Jesus.
Yeah.
And we hope that this conversation inspires you. And yeah, here with us, Nicky. So let's do a little round of applause.
Let's go, Nikki.
So yes, this is our friend Nicky, and we met her. I met her a little bit later, but
Oh, man. I met her in 2017, 2018.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
Just
2018.
about. I was working at a university, and we got to meet each other. And then through there, God has opened doors through Nikki for me, and then opening some doors for Chave. And
Yeah.
we've gotten to do ministry together and life together. And so it's been amazing. And we're just so happy to have you.
Yeah, thank
here
you.
with us.
Thank you. It's been so much fun to get to serve alongside you guys, especially because Steph, when I met you, I was in a season of transition myself. I was in between ministry roles, and God was showing me what my next steps were, but the door hadn't fully opened yet. I was literally in a waiting season where I knew where I had come from and I knew where I was going, but I wasn't there yet. And that is such
in
a
between.
definition of our entire faith journey.
Yeah.
And it's probably one of the most uncomfortable places to be, but that's usually where God does the most work.
Absolutely.
And I just remember that summer was so transformative in my life. And so the fact that we were able to reconnect, and then you've expanded like your circle. I've gotten to
Yeah.
know a lot of the women that you've worked with, and it's just been really great. And I love cheering you guys on and seeing all this stuff that God's doing through you.
We obviously know Nicky, the director. Nicky, you are a powerhouse in SoCal, just in California in general. But there's a lot more than Nicky than just Nicky, the executive director of SoCal for women. So we just want to dive into that a little bit. So tell us, what was life growing up for you, for your family? Do you have any siblings? How was life growing up for you?
Yeah. First of all, Nikki and powerhouse in the same sentence is not one I would recommend using. So editor, scratch that from the record.
We're keeping it, guys.
But I honestly, I want to answer your question, but I just want to address even just the little bit that you've shared about what I'm doing now. Like, never in my wildest dreams did I think that God would place me in the positions that I've had the privilege of serving in. And I really enjoy what I get to do because I get to meet women and men in what I do and see how God is transforming them. And one of my biggest passions is just this understanding that knowing what God has done for me, he can do for others. And so if I get to even be a little part of that, I just want to see other people shine, and I want to see other people soar in what it is that God has called them to do. If I get to even have a little inkling of a part in that, a lot of what that looks like is I push people off of cliffs, not literally. Don't come for me. But I find myself having the same conversations over and over again with people, mostly women, who feel like they can't possibly do what it is that God has called them to do for whatever reason. Usually because they don't feel qualified. They don't feel like it's something that's within the reality of their grasp. And I'm like, no, God, you'd be surprised if you just submit to God and watch how he unfolds things in your life. And, but then when you get to a place where you hold influence, you have to be willing to open doors for others.
Absolutely.
We cannot hold on to that selfishly because that's not what it's for. Jesus himself came down as a baby.
Yeah.
He was both God and human,
Mhm.
and he lowered himself down
Yeah.
to be with his people.
Yeah.
If he can do that, we have to do that as well.
Absolutely.
So,
Already preaching. That's good.
but growing up, I actually did not grow up in the church.
Okay.
So, and I've shared a little bit of my testimony before at, retreats or different conferences that I've been able to speak at. But my mom was 13 years old when she got pregnant with me. And 2 weeks after she turned 14, I was born. And in that time, my grandparents, both her parents and my father's parents, they were pressuring her to have an abortion because she was a literal child. She didn't have an understanding of morality or ethics. She was not raised in the church.
Yeah.
She just was simply afraid. She was afraid of the procedure. She was afraid of the stigma. And so she chose not to go through with that. And so she had me and she raised me. And we were living on our own when she was 16. She dropped out of high school and we moved out. And I was 2 at the time.
Wow.
My father was a few years older and he graduated high school. I was at his high school graduation. I'm in his yearbook. So, flex. But he graduated and went into the military. And so he was not around, not because he was uninterested. He just physically could not be with me because he was being stationed around the world and serving our country. So they never married each other. But when my mom turned 18, she married her first husband and they went on to have more children. So I have 2 half-sisters, which I don't use the term half-sister. They're just my sisters, but just for the, sake of the family tree.
Yes.
We share a mother, but we have different fathers. And then my dad went on to get married to a woman who had a little girl and he adopted her. So we're not blood related, but she is my sister on my dad's side. So I'm both an only child and the oldest child.
Oh, that's interesting.
That is interesting.
Yes. My kids still can't figure this out.
Yeah.
They're like, how are we related to these people again? But I was not raised in the church and it just was not a part of our culture. My family that I was raised around, there was a lot of abuse, a lot of addiction issues. My mom had many people in and out of the home. Some were kind and some were not so kind. And so I was exposed to a lot of things that no young child should be exposed to. But that led me to make some really poor choices when I became a teenager. There was one summer when I was 13 that I got to go spend with my dad and his family. And it was the first time in my childhood memory that I had spent a significant amount of time with him. And when I came back to my home after spending time with him and beginning to have this understanding of what a non-abusive family dynamic might feel like, I came back to my home living with my mother and it messed me up. I had no anchor. I just knew that all my life I had felt unwanted. I had felt like there was no place for me. I was just an accident. And I got a taste for a summer of what it would feel like to be normal, to live in a middle-class family, to not have drugs and alcohol and abuse and porn and whatever else you can possibly think of as an everyday occurrence, to just have dinner at 5:00 and have a normal bedtime and not be allowed to listen to certain music and not be allowed to watch certain movies and to have boundaries and all of those things I was exposed to. And suddenly I was like craving that. I had never experienced true love from a father. So when I returned home, it was my freshman year of high school, and I began to seek that love out in unhealthy ways. And at 14 years old, I found myself in a lot of things that 14-year-olds should not be dabbling with. And that resulted in my mom kicking me out of the home and sending me to go live with my father. Now, he was a complete stranger. I had spent that one summer with him, maybe 8 weeks, and that was it in 14 years of my life. And I was now living across the country. I was cut off from all my friends. I was homeschooled. I was not allowed to do anything.
Just uprooted.
Just completely uprooted. And again, in a place with no anchor. But my dad had become a Christian. And so moving into his home, now that kind of traditional family had an added element of the gospel.
Yeah.
And so the only place that I was really allowed to go and be around kids my own age was youth group. And so we had been going to a church plant, and I accepted the Lord. It was like when I figured out who this Jesus person was, and that there was a heavenly Father that not only loved me, but had a hand in my creation, that I wasn't an accident. That was a paradigm shift. Like, that has such an impact on your identity. To truly go from being nobody wants you, you're an accident, I don't even know why you're here, to all of a sudden being loved, to being cared for, to being accepted. I wish I could say that I was transformed immediately, but
it's a process.
It is a process. But having that as, now I have a new anchor. I have a root that's suddenly beginning to grow, and it changed my life. So living with my dad all through the rest of my high school years, I still rebelled. You know, you can't undo 14 years of trauma
in 1 week.
In 1 week, exactly. In one youth group, maybe for some people. Okay, God can do miracles.
He can.
But that's not how it happened in my life. And so there was still some really, really rough times. But as I began to become a young adult and I began to really explore faith and what that means, God began to do that transformative work in my life. And now I stand before you as a woman who's been married to the same man for 26 years.
Wow.
And I have 3 kids who are all doing really well. They do not have any inkling of what kinds of trauma I went through. They've never experienced that. In fact, we joke and laugh about it a lot. If you know me at all, like, it's very rare that I'm super serious. And so that's just how my kids are. And there will be times where I will make a joke about something growing up, you know, and my daughter will go, yeah, Mom, we know you had childhood trauma, you know, and it's a joke because it's so far removed from our current reality. Not that childhood trauma is a joke, but it just is a testimony to how much healing God has brought into my life and how redemptive the power of the Holy Spirit is. That my kids, just one generation removed, have been so protected from the darkness that I experienced in this world. And I'm forever grateful for that.
I think that also, like, what your obedience or the way that you decided to say, okay, God, like, I'm here, like, let's do this. I think your children's, and, you know, like they say, from generation to generation, I think they'll benefit off of this obedience that you have, because they won't, like you said, your kids have not experienced this, and your grandkids and your great grandkids, you know, God willing, that they continue this legacy of, hey, this is not the route we're going in. Like, you worked hard to make sure that it stopped with you, and I think that's beautiful to hear. That there is, it's very rare also to hear now, like, long marriages, just because it's not a thing anymore, you know. So I think even in that, like, it's giving them the example of, like, hey, you could marry the same person for the rest of your life and be super happy. And I mean, I see you guys. You guys
are awesome.
You guys are awesome. You guys post the funniest things, but you guys are awesome. And I think it's a testament, but also, like, you're setting the bar for, like, your kids, but also for generations around you or people around you, to where, like, it's like, okay, this is goals. This is what, you know. I think, like, even personally for me, like, I grew up in a home where it was super, you know, abusive. Obviously we grew up Christian still, but it was tough. It was definitely different. So I think, like, hearing that encourages me to, like, say, hey, keep going, you know. Even if it's just one person in the house, like, you'll get there. and your future family will appreciate the fact that you did what you had to do. And I think that's really what this moment is pointing out. You know, like your obedience is going to help generations to come in your family and in your bloodline. That it stopped with you. So that's commendable.
Yeah, thank
That's-
you.
that's powerful.
It's honestly, I have to say it's all the Lord, and I know
Yeah.
that sounds really cliche, but there there are always times where, and this is where I just want to like circle back. Childhood trauma is not a joke.
Yeah.
It is something that you struggle with the rest of your life. But through the power of the Holy Spirit, you can make changes in your life that are going to affect the generations to come. And I happen to find humor in things.
Yeah.
That's been a huge coping mechanism for
Yeah.
me. Healthy or unhealthy, still to be determined. I'm working that out with my therapist. But I can say that, like I said, the reason why I love what I get to do in ministry is because I have seen his transformative power firsthand. I have experienced it. I have witnessed it. And even though there are times where things aren't perfect, like I still deal with issues within my family. I still deal with repercussions of things that happened in the past that I still, the enemy likes to bring things up. He
Yeah.
likes to scoop up the dirt and he wants to
Always.
throw it in your face.
Yeah.
And he wants to keep you stuck in that mire. He wants to keep you from being able to move forward. I think of, I don't know if you guys are old enough, but did you ever watch The Never Ending Story when you were
Never.
growing up? Oh my God.
Wait, what did she say?
The never
The
ending.
Never Ending Story. So it's a movie that I saw when I was growing up. It's very popular amongst the elderly folks in my generation. But it's about a boy who is on an adventure and he has this beloved horse and they are going on this epic fantasy adventure and they cross over this, I want to say it's called the Swamp of Sadness. I can't be sure with my, elderly memory. But his horse, his name was Artax, the horse, and he gets stuck in this muddy swamp and he starts sinking and the warrior boy is trying so hard to pull his horse out, and the more he struggles, the more he just continues to sink and
Okay.
he's just stuck in that.
Yeah.
And that's what I imagine when I think of the enemy trying to entrap us in things that are meant to overwhelm us and meant to keep us stuck, is that are we going to just keep flailing about and sink further and further into despair, into shame, into temptations, into things that the enemy keeps trying to throw at us? Or are we going to be able to fully surrender that to the Lord and allow him, even though it's painful? Because that's the issue, is that they were trying to escape something painful without dealing with it.
Yeah.
If we try to just gloss over it and pretend that it doesn't exist, we will get stuck. We will get stuck whether we recognize it or not.
Yeah.
And we have to be able to allow the Lord to do that transformative work in our lives. And it's not easy. I'm
Yeah.
going to be 46, and there are things that I'm still dealing with from when I was 12, when I was 9. But one of the things that I heard Christine Kane say once that just struck me, and I'm going to totally bulldoze the quote, but essentially saying, the thing that happened to you happened for a season, but the thing on the other side of it has been much longer, right? So how long are we going to be stuck in
Yeah.
something that happened to us in just a season?
Powerful.
Versus the length of time in our lives that God has been redeeming us.
Yeah.
But we keep going back to that short little moment, right? And yeah, it happens. God keeps having to pull me out of that muck every now and then because the enemy wants to push me back.
Yeah,
yeah.
He wants to keep pushing me back into those areas where I'm just like, oh, why did I do that? Why did I make those choices when I was
Yeah.
14?
Yeah.
Why did I, why did I allow that to take over my life? Why did I not just do the thing that I knew was
Yeah.
right? But God's like, but look at look at all the ways that you've been obedient, and look at what I've been
Yes.
able to do for you.
Yeah.
And so to just be able to slam the door on the devil and say,
Yes.
yeah, I'm not going to let you continue to have power
Yeah.
over me in this area, because God is continuing to
Yeah.
redeem me again and again.
Yeah.
Every time I bring it to him, it's a new opportunity
Yeah.
to experience his freedom.
And I think this is important, like a super important topic in a culture that romanticizes trauma and like staying in the trauma and staying unhealed and being triggered. Because a lot of people, they want to stay in the hole. And I think the devil has done a really good job at keeping us in the beauty of trauma and not healing. So if somebody's like in the midst of trauma and they're thinking about not going to therapy and they're thinking about not healing and they've just kind of been in the same rut for years and years, the same cycle, what would you tell that person?
It's really hard because there's no one size fits all answer other than Jesus. But even that is so layered because he's going to deal with each of his children differently. But there's no way that you can force somebody else to do it.
Yeah.
They have to make that decision for themselves. And so the only thing that I can say is, listen, my life is not perfect. I'm not even like the epitome of grace and perfection at all. But I do have evidence that this works. Like, it's worth it. It's worth it to address trauma, to whether you're going to therapy, you're seeing a spiritual director, you are going through a Bible study, you are doing what you can do, as uncomfortable as it is, to get past this so that you can experience the freedom on the other side. It's worth it. And it's just, you know, Paul even alludes to that in the New Testament. Follow me as I follow Christ,
Yes.
right? Like, I'm not doing it perfectly, and I don't wish what happened to me on anybody.
Yeah.
But please know it's not worth it to be stuck there forever. It's not. There's beauty on the other side of it.
Yeah.
There's beauty on the other side of it. And you have to be able to have a desire to get there, because otherwise you will remain stuck.
Yeah.
And that's not what the Lord wants for us. He wants us to live abundant lives. He wants us to be full of fruit. He wants us to go and make disciples of all nations. There are challenges for us and commissions for us throughout Scripture that if we profess to be followers of Christ, this is what our life could look like. Does that mean it's always going to be easy? Absolutely not. We are not promised that in this world. But there's a certain amount of grace that comes with uncomfortable places and being able to cross over on the other side of that. And I would just sit somebody down and say, listen, it's worth it. If you could just trust the Lord, he will get you through this, and you won't ever have to feel this way to the same depth and capacity ever again.
That's good. Who was like a influential person for you, either after you accepted Jesus or just growing up, that kind of would, if there was one that would just kind of say like, hey, Nicky, like, what are you doing? Come back. What are you doing? Like, kind of like just growing up. Was there a specific person that you could say like, oh, this was my mentor, this was my person growing up after you accepted Jesus?
Yeah, I think when I was still living at my parents' home, my youth pastor was hugely influential in my life. There would be times where he would sit down and mediate between my father and I, because it was like we were speaking two different languages.
Yeah.
And he would sit down, and he was genuinely a mediator. He would say, well, you know, Nicky, your dad has a point, you know, but then he'd also look at my dad and be like, hey, you know, like, Nicky is not lying here. Like, you know, and he really helped me have this understanding that faith, I love what you said about like grace and grit. Like, faith is gritty. The journey is not smooth and easy. And I think sometimes we do a disservice when we're evangelizing people who have never experienced Christ, when we tell them all you have to do is say the sinner's prayer and your life is going to be perfect. There's no promise of that until we reach our eternal reward.
Yeah.
Right? But he was able to help me see that while it's rough, like it's still like you can still do this. And he would encourage me along the way, and he would challenge me in ways. I was a youth leader.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, what? Like, if you knew what I was doing 2 years ago, you would never allow me. You know what I'm saying? But he understood that, like, you don't have to be perfect to serve Jesus. And then I got married really young. I got married when I was 19. And my mother-in-law, people joke that mother-in-laws are terrible. I had the best mother-in-law. Like, if your mother-in-law is awful, I'm so sorry. You can, I'll
said,
share.
"Can't relate."
And
I'll
if you're a
share.
mother-in-law, please
My
be nice.
mother-in-law, she was one of the best women that I knew. And she saw me for who I was. Now, you have to understand, my husband grew up in a completely opposite family as me. He grew up, his parents were married for 46 years. They had, they were like the quintessential nuclear family. They had 2 kids, they had a dog. They were like, lived in the same town for generations, hung out with all their cousins.
Yeah.
Like, they just
Picture
grew up
of
in church.
perfection. Yes.
Exactly. And so when I came into the family, I just like shook things up. They were like, they did not see me coming. They had no idea what
At what
Jason
age
was
did you
signing
guys
up
meet?
for. So I met him when I was 15.
Okay. So right when you had just
Yes, I
met
had
Jesus.
just
Yeah.
I had just experienced salvation. But we didn't start dating until I was 17, and then got married when I was 19, and started our family right away.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get into all the hows and the whys, but we didn't
Yeah,
quite
yeah.
understand them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
You're
Yeah.
good.
And so we just had 3 kids, bam, bam, bam. And then
Okay.
I was like, oh, I think I'm figuring this out now.
Yes.
We're going to slow down. Okay.
Yeah.
So
You guys met at church?
yeah, we met
Okay.
at church.
Okay.
He was also in the military, and he started going to church. He was just entered the military, and we started dating and got married really young. And so I moved across the country to live near his family where
Okay.
he grew up. He
Wow.
had, except for 5 years of his life, he lived in the same city his whole life, except for the 5 years that he was in the military. And so he had roots there, whereas I didn't. I didn't have roots. We joke at our wedding, we probably had about 150 people. I had 1 table at the reception that was my family. The
Wow.
rest were all people connected to him and his family. So his community was very deep.
Yeah.
And so when I married him, I got adopted into his community. And my mother-in-law really taught me what it meant to be a wife, to be a mother. Don't get me wrong, I love my mom, but she was learning this as she went. She herself did not have a good example. She was a child when she had her first baby. So she didn't have it all together.
Yeah.
Right. And so my mother-in-law, growing up the way she did in her family, she just to me was such an example of who I wanted to be as a wife and a mother. And she was a strong woman of prayer and faith. And I could go to her with anything. And I did. And I just really leaned on her a lot. And as a young woman who's trying to figure out life, not quite sure, I just thought, I'm going to get married. I didn't know what that meant. I did not have a good example of that in my life. I just was, it was very romantic, and he's going to whisk me away. And, she showed me what it meant to get through the not so romantic parts.
Yeah.
The nitty gritty, if you will, the hard times, okay, now all of the fun has worn off, and now we've got to actually pay bills and stuff.
Yeah.
And she really showed me what that could mean. And she served in women's ministries in the church. And so she was a good example in that. And she would show me what it meant to study the word, and how, I would sit in her Sunday school class and just soak it in. And she was such an influential woman of faith in my life that was tangible. I had, of course, people that I love, Beth Moore, Christine Kane, Priscilla Schreier. Like there are very well-known women that I will never stand in the same room as them that had an impact on me.
Maybe, I don't know.
But my mother-in-law, she was there for me in my most desperate moments. And she still encouraged me, and she showed me what it meant to be a woman of God when things are really hard.
That's good.
And I'll always be grateful for her influence.
That's good.
So
I think something to highlight from this specific part was when you were talking about, you said not that I don't love my mom and anything, but she didn't know. I think that a lot of the times we also don't what the backstory of your mother-in-law, like how she was raised. Maybe she was raised in a home where it was like unity, or maybe she decided to, you know, or maybe it wasn't like that, and then she was able to break the chains and just kind of say like, I'm starting a legacy of love, of this, of that, right? But I think something that you said was like, and I can't judge her for it because you said she didn't have an example or didn't know better, because also she was a child when she had you. And I think that's important because a lot of the times, especially like youngsters growing up, we think, well, they're our parents. They, you know, like why don't they do this for me, or why don't they do that for me? But a lot of the parents, I think this generation now is understanding like, hey, I have kids at an older age. Like, I mean, even they said the child rate is still going down because nobody wants to have a bunch of kids anymore.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to understand that, because either if it's something that she wasn't brought up, maybe in a household that was safe, maybe a household that didn't show or embrace love, maybe she was probably never loved properly either. And I think that showing your parents grace in that and understanding where they're coming from is also important, because a lot of the times we could hold them to a standard that they have no idea the standard we're holding them to, but also they have no idea what that standard is because they were never shown that.
yeah.
And so obviously, you expressed that you did not grow up Christian. So I think even in that, like, I like understanding that it's such a different environment. It's such a different household that you were brought up in. And I think, like, I'm sure that there was some healing that happened between you and your mom, but also like understanding, hey, I need to show her grace because she didn't have it all together. She didn't know, but she was also a child when she had you. And so maybe carrying that along would probably have hurt you more than anything. But also I think that's like a important thing to just kind of highlight, because we just got to give our parents grace, because they know no better themselves. They don't know what, there's probably pains that they were going through that they probably never spoke about and they probably never addressed. Because I think therapy has now become something that's such a thing that is spoken about, and even still, like, at least for us in our community, Hispanic community, it's still such a like topic of some people get uncomfortable. Should I not?
Yeah.
But I think that something that I've learned is like not everybody's open to therapy. And this is us now with like the evolution of stuff. So I could only imagine back then.
Yeah.
I could only imagine like how it was, growing up in maybe an abusive home, or a just places that was not safe. How it was for them and what they probably did not learn, and just kind of showing them grace in that. I think that's important to remind people. Just show grace to your parents, show grace to the people that raised you. And even if they didn't raise you, because they probably, like I have friends that, they were given up for adoption and stuff, but when they are able to go back and talk back to their birth mom, they say like, I didn't have anything to give you. I was still a baby. I was a child as well.
Yeah.
And I realized that it was either I gave you up and gave you a chance of life, or dragged you along with me for God knows how long, and not be able to provide for you. And so I think that's important. Just showing your parents grace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's important in general. Yeah.
Yeah, that took me a really long time to get to that place.
Yeah.
Because especially as a young girl, a teenager who had been kicked out of her home, there was so much anger. I was just so angry for so many years.
Yeah.
But when I became a parent myself and really had this understanding of, oh, I'm responsible for a whole other human being. It's not about my choices and how they affect me anymore. It's about my choices and how they affect this person.
Yeah.
That I began to have this understanding of, oh, I'm doing this at 20, at 21, at 24, in a healthy home, what would it have been like for my mom at 14?
Yeah.
In a home where she had no support. She had to drop out of school so she could get a job, and
They wanted her to have an abortion.
they wanted her to have an abortion, so she didn't have the support. It was
Yeah.
like, you know, it's not like they were like, oh, come here, sweetie, let's, you know. And my mom is still alive, and so her story is hers to tell. But I can tell you that teenage pregnancy was something that ran in our family.
Yeah.
Her mom was 16 when she had my mom, and it just went on for generations. I think my grandmother's mom was 16 or 17 when she was born, and so this was just something that perpetuated in my family.
Yeah.
It was, if you can't take care of yourself, you find a guy and he'll take care of you for you. But that ends up being very unhealthy when that guy is a drug addict
Yes.
and he has violent tendencies. And now you're oppressed and you can't get out and you have no way of escape other than numb. Just, okay, taking the drugs or selling the drugs because you got to keep a roof over your head or whatever it is that, you know, you need to do. It's for survival.
Yeah.
When you don't have a community around you, much less a community of faith,
Yeah.
you have to do what you have to do. And I think we have so many families who are still trapped in that because they don't have the community, they don't have the faith, they don't have an understanding of the gospel. And that's where we come in as believers. That's where we come in, whether you are a pastor or a worship leader or a Bible study teacher, or you're just a disciple. We're all called to minister, to bring this ministry of reconciliation to our communities. And that's our job, is to reflect what it is that God has done in our lives back into those that we are living next door to, that we are going to school with, that we see walking their dog, that we are working with, that we can bring hope to them. Because so many of them are living trapped. There's no way to get out. How do you get out when you are stuck and you can't leave because you don't have an education? You don't have money in savings. Like, you're living paycheck to paycheck if you have a job at all.
Yeah.
How do you get out of violent situations? How do you provide for your kids a loving home? How do you give them what it takes to be able to make their lives better? That's what every parent wants, is that their child will have a better opportunity, be able to have better resources, to be able to move into a community or to move somewhere where they can actually have hope for a future. That's what every parent wants. And I became a parent myself and realized that my mom didn't have that example. My mom didn't have that hope, and she didn't have that as an example for herself. There were no aspirations to be better. It was just survive day to day. Don't get beaten to death. Don't die of an overdose.
Yeah.
Don't be homeless. Don't live on the street. That was survival. You can't think about the future when you have to survive today.
Yeah.
And honestly, my dad, if he had not gone into the military, he would have had the same realities.
Yeah.
But the military provided the opportunity for education, for stability, for a career that when he got out of the military, he was able to continue as a civilian. And he was able to set up a different life for himself because he submitted to something that was a cataclysmic change.
Yeah.
But in doing so, he met Jesus.
Yeah.
And that did something on a spiritual level. And when you combine those two things, he was able to get out of his dysfunctional family, his dysfunctional community. He was able to get out of poverty, and he was able to actually create this life that included Jesus and pass that on to me, his only biological child, who now I have then connected with a man who was raised in the church that just strengthened my faith. And so that's why we're able to give this to our kids.
Yeah.
And it's the only way that I was able to come to this understanding of, I don't agree with the choices my mom has made. I have had to set firm boundaries for many years in my life, even as an adult, even as a Christ follower. But I have grace. I understand that a lot of the choices that she made, she didn't do it on purpose. She didn't know better. and she had no other resources for that. I'm just grateful that the Lord gave me a way out, even though it was through stupid rebellion. I look back and wish I had made different choices, but I see his hand in how he redeemed my story.
Yeah.
I don't think he caused me to live in something like that. I don't think he caused me to make those choices, but he took the mess that I made and he was able to clean it up and form it into something beautiful that now can help others be able to see, oh, if she can get out of this, if God can do that in her life, maybe he can do that for me. And I guarantee you he can.
Yeah.
I guarantee it, because I'm not the only person out there with a story like this.
Yeah.
I've seen it time and time again. God can do this. He can pull you up out of that swamp of sadness. He can clean you up and he can put you on your way. And now it's up to us to bring people with us, to look back and not say, okay, well, I'm done with that, but to try to pull others out of that swamp.
Yeah.
Can we pull other people up and out of the muck and the mire and the dirt and the entrapment that the enemy sets up for them? And can we help them to see that light, to see that hope that Christ offers to them?
That's good. So, how do you go from all that to how does the opportunity for, coming with the SoCal network, and how does that transition happen? From where were you? You were living in another state?
Yeah. I grew up all over. Like
Okay.
I was born in Central California, ended up in Illinois, then Colorado, and then back in SoCal.
Wow.
So I did almost a full circle. So
So how does it go from everyday Nikki to then obviously you're seeking Jesus, and then this opportunity with the network shows up? How does that come about?
How much time do we have? Okay. So when I found Jesus, I wanted to be in the church as much as possible, like physically in the building. Like anytime the doors were open, that's where I was, because it's where my friends were. It's where I felt safe. It's where I was beginning to experience intimacy with Jesus. And so I was always there. I got saved in a church plant. So it was a brand new church. We met in a junior high school building on Sunday mornings, and we met in a senior center on Thursday nights. And I was there to set up chairs. My dad ran sound, and so I would haul in equipment with him. My very first ministry job, if you will, we had these things long before projectors existed, long before LED screens.
The sheets?
The overhead projectors.
Yep, I used to
with
do
the
that.
transparencies. That was me.
Yes.
And those of you who do Pro Presenter and you feel awkward when you miss the slide, imagine you're standing in the middle of the band and you mess up and put it on backwards, or you pull out the wrong file or whatever, and now you got to scramble, and everyone is looking at you.
Oh, they don't tell you the song that they did a middle song?
Oh, yeah, the church
Now you're flipping
secretary
through all these-
forgot to update it.
It's just a screen with the light on the wall.
Yeah. So
That's
that was my
pressure.
first ministry job. I was 15 and I was flipping slides, and it wasn't
So
fun,
funny.
but it was fun. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Adrenaline.
yes. That's where I learned to operate under pressure.
Yes.
But I just wanted to be in the church and just do whatever, like make myself useful. And I honestly think a lot of it was because it was my safe space. I felt happy and safe there. But there was also a lot of it where I was dealing with issues of feeling like I wasn't wanted. And so I felt like I had to earn my right to be there. And so if I could be useful, if I could do something to make you want me around, I'm going to do it. And so I would do everything and anything. It didn't matter. I was just always at the church. And so when I got married, my husband and I started attending the church where he grew up. I did the same thing. We were youth leaders at our old church. So now that we're married, we're going to be youth leaders here. And then as my kids grew, the policy at that church was if your kid was in the class, you had to serve in that class. And so there would be seasons where we had one in the nursery, one in the preschool class, and one in the elementary class. And so every Sunday, 3 out of 4 Sundays, I was serving. And then one Sunday a month, I would get to be in church. And then we were also youth leaders. So every Wednesday night, we were in church. And so I was just constantly serving and serving and serving until my daughter was about, I don't know, 6 months old or so. She didn't like the loud music that we played in youth. And so I was like, I'm going to just like let my husband do this. The boys were in Royal Rangers, you know, they were in the boys program. And I just went and sat with her in the women's Bible study down in the sanctuary. It was much softer music, a very quiet, women's ministries. And I would sit in the back with my daughter, and, pretty soon after a while, I would sit up a little closer, and then I'd sit up a little closer, and next thing you know, I'm like engaged in discussions. And because we would do Beth Moore studies, which is back in the day, you'd watch an hour-long video, and then you'd sit down and you'd work through these workbooks together, and you'd talk about what you just learned, and you'd pray with one another. And so I would just show up every week, and I'd have my daughter there, and then I put her in the nursery, and so now I'm getting more involved. And then I start telling the pastor's wife, like, hey, like, wouldn't it be fun if we had like a women's retreat? Like, wouldn't it be fun if we like did something where we go away for a weekend? And she's like, sure, but I'm like 24. I'm like not in any sort of influential leadership with adults, And so she's like, I was like, I'll help you. And so she and I and another young woman in the church, we decided we were going to put on a women's retreat. It was the most stressful year of my life. We did this retreat. We had 30 women, and we did it at a hotel.
That's a good number.
And it was like, I was so stressed. I think I cried every day for a year. And I was like, I'm never doing this again. This is going to be one and done. Yeah. Get to the end. Sunday, we're packed up. My friend and I are driving back. And I'm like, hey, I have an idea for next year.
Oh, my goodness.
And did that for 16 years.
Wow.
Did that for 16 years. And in that time, the pastor's wife, her mother-in-law, was elderly and needed full-time care. And so one Wednesday night, I would help co-teach, I would facilitate, I would do announcements, but it was really the pastor's wife that ran the women's study.
Yeah.
And one Wednesday night, 7 p.m. on the dot, we're getting ready to start, and my pastor's wife comes up, puts her hand on my shoulder and says, Tag, you're it. And I was like, I didn't know we were playing a game. What's going on? She's like, I'm retiring from women's ministries. You're the new women's ministry leader. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? These women had been Christians longer than I had been alive. I had no idea what the heck I was supposed to offer them.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm a young mom. I'm, young married and barely a Christian. Okay, let's be honest. The first few years didn't count. Okay, but God is so faithful, and I was getting more and more excited about it. And as the years went on, I really had a desire to want to actually move away from boxed curriculum. That's what we always used.
Yes.
It was like you just plug and play. But I just felt this stirring, like I want to teach. I feel like the Lord is dropping things in my heart.
Yeah.
But I wanted to make sure I didn't commit accidental heresy.
Yeah.
Which is a thing,
It really is.
So I had heard about this school of ministry that was going on, and I realized I didn't know anything about denominations. I didn't know anything about like the SoCal network.
Yeah.
I knew nothing about any of that. I had just gotten connected with the women's ministry leader who would run like our big conferences and stuff here in SoCal. And I knew that she was a part of like our district leadership. I didn't know what any of that meant.
Yeah.
But I had heard through connecting with her about the school of ministry, and I thought, I'm just going to go learn how to be a better Bible study teacher. And so I started going to the SoCal School of Ministry at the SoCal Network, and I get to the first class, and I'm like, I think I made a big mistake. This is not learn how to be a better Bible study teacher. This is like pastor school. Like, everyone in there, men and women, they're like, this is your first class? I raised my hand. There's like, bunch of us raise our hands. And they're going around the room. What do you feel called to do? And, well, I'm going to go to the mission field. Well, I'm a worship pastor. Well, I want to plant a church someday. And I'm like looking around going, what have I done? I am in the wrong room. But that first class that I took was on ethics, and it was taught by Ray Rachels, and I literally just was, I was just, it captured me. I couldn't not go back. And so every time I would go back, I would hear more and more stories. I didn't even know women could be pastors.
Yeah.
And the church in which I served, women could lead freely in women's ministries, in children's ministries. But that was kind of it. And it's ironic, I know, given what I do now, but I knew that I was not always called to children's ministries or women's ministries. That's not something that I felt like, that's it, I'm locked in. But I didn't know what that meant. And it wasn't until I realized that women could be pastors, it was like literally all of a sudden the picture became clear. And I was like, that's what it is that I'm called to do. I'm called to be a pastor. Did I think I'd ever pastor a church? No. Like, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to get super ambitious here. You know, I just, like, now I have like a definition. Like, I have a name for what it is that I've been feeling.
Yeah.
And so I continued to go through, and I did all of school of ministry, and I got my first ministry credential. And I remember we were in need of, there was an opening on the pastoral staff at the church that I had served for years and years and years. And I just kept waiting and waiting. I was the church secretary and women's ministry leader. That's what I did. And I just kept thinking, well, I'm credentialed now. Maybe I'll get, you know, nothing. And finally, my husband was like, you just need to talk to the pastor. And I was like, I don't want to do that, you know. But when I talked to the pastor, he was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, sure. So we hired a new church secretary, and I moved down the hall and got my own office, and I became an associate pastor. And I was like,
It's all it took, a conversation.
just a conversation? That's all it took?
Sounds about right.
I didn't have to cry all those nights. I didn't have to fear that I was being overlooked, that nobody wanted me. I just had to ask.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Asking you shall receive.
I had served for so many years in various capacities.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, I don't want to lose you. So sure. And so we didn't have space for an associate pastor. It wasn't like in the budget. So I was just called staff pastor, not because I was pastor over our staff, but because I wasn't doing children's ministries. I wasn't doing youth ministries, and I didn't know how to do music. So I wasn't worship pastor. I was just a pastor on staff.
Yeah.
Hence the name. So I did that for several years, and that morphed into just kind of doing what I feel like I do best, which is just kind of like filling gaps. So when we needed a kids pastor, I stepped into kids ministry. When we needed women's ministry, I stepped into women's ministry. When we did, you know, I occasionally got to preach on Sundays, which was kind of a big deal in that church. And so I did that for many, many years until the Lord began to stir in my heart that it's time for a change. And that was terrifying, because as I'm sure you are, maybe, you know what? No, you probably have never experienced pain in church leadership before, right? No, never.
Never, for sure.
Never. It's always rainbows and glitter
Always,
and unicorns and cupcakes, right?
Leadership is beautiful.
Leadership is beautiful. So when I began to feel this urge to move, I was afraid that it was because I was just I was hurt, or I was offended, or like, you know, I'm just, it's just wishful thinking because I'm frustrated today or whatever. And I couldn't shake it though. And I kept thinking, I'm just going to hunker down. I'm going to root out this root of bitterness. I'm going to shake off this offense. I'm going to all the things, right? And then I started to doubt whether I could even hear the voice of God. I'm like, I'm a credentialed minister, and I'm like, maybe I don't know. This can't be the voice of God telling me to leave the church that my husband grew up in, that my children have, the only church my children have ever known, the church where my in-laws attend, like, to just leave. That doesn't make any sense. God would never ask me to do that. And so I started doing a Bible study on how to discern the voice of God. And I'm like, you know, and I just think it's hilarious now looking back. Like, I was a credentialed minister. Of course I recognize the voice of the Lord. I was just chicken, you know? So then there's all of these things started lining up. And I remember in that time, I had trained up somebody to take over women's ministries. And so somebody else was leading that in that season. And I happened to, like, she took over the retreats and everything that we did, because we did them for so many years. And this was the first retreat that I got to just go and attend. I wasn't on her leadership team. I just had released it to her.
Yeah.
And I get there, and the speaker she had picked worked in the prophetic. And I was afraid. I was like, I don't want to talk to her. I don't want her to know my business. I don't need any of that. And so I would sit in the back, you know, and I would just kind of stick to myself. And at one point, I read a scripture, I remember that weekend, out of Jeremiah, where essentially the Lord is speaking to Jeremiah, and he's saying to the Israelites that I've shown you the path in which to go. I have shown you the direction,
Yes.
and you refuse to go.
Yeah.
And so therefore I'm going to frustrate the fruits of your labor. And that crushed my heart. But I was like, I don't want that to happen. I had worked so hard on different things, different projects, that I was like, ooh, Lord, I don't want that to happen. But I was still afraid. I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to pray about it a little bit, you know? Now I'm starting to think maybe. It had been about 6 months in this journey, and I'm beginning to think, okay, maybe the Lord's calling me out, but I don't know what the next step should be. And then the last day of that retreat, the speaker is starting to preach her sermon.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, I have literally hidden from this woman the whole weekend. I'm like not wanting to go anywhere near her. And, because I'm like, I don't want her to read my mail.
Yes.
You know, I'm a leader in the church, and these women have known me since I was, a teenager. And like, I'm just like, yeah, I just don't want them to know what I'm struggling with and what I'm going through and what I'm wrestling with. And so I'm sitting at a table, and we had a new staff member on our team. She had just joined our staff about 6 months prior as our worship leader. And she had come from out of state, and she's this sweet young woman, single, no kids, just like a deer in the headlights. Like, she just is so innocent and sweet, right? And she's sitting next to me, and all of a sudden, in the middle of the sermon, the preacher stops, and she points at the worship pastor sitting next to me, and she said, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just feel so strongly. And she points right at her. Now, she's literally sitting right next to me, and she said, God is saying that you are too comfortable where you are, and he is calling you out, and you are not being obedient. And the room got so silent. And one of our board members was there, and she's sitting in the back, and she calls out, but she just got here.
Wrong person.
This poor young woman, oh my gosh, she's just sitting there like, what? No. Like, what are you talking about? This has no application on her life whatsoever. But I'm sitting there, and I am terrified, because I know that word is for me. And I know that the Lord had mercy on me in that moment. And I went back and apologized to this girl later on. I shared the whole story with her, but I was like, I'm so sorry that he called you out in that moment. But he did it for me because I didn't want to be exposed like that. And I went and admitted to the Lord, and I was like, Lord, I don't want to steal a word for someone else, but I just know you're talking to me, and I need you to help me take the next step. That was on Sunday. Tuesday, we had staff meeting, and I turned in my resignation at the church.
Wow.
And I just knew I have to do this, because it's not something like I'd be willing to suffer forever. Not that I'm like a gleeful martyr or anything, but like, I just don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to be, I don't want to cause trouble, and I don't want to pull the rug out from under my family and all of that. But the Lord made it so clear to me I couldn't disobey. And so I turned in my resignation, and that was the summer that we met.
Wow.
I got my first speaking invitation outside of my church was at that girls' ministries camp.
Wow.
And that summer I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I had submitted my resume out. Nobody was calling. It was like crickets all summer. And we had started attending a church that was in a different county. And my family and we didn't know anybody there except for the lead pastor, and I barely knew him. Like, we had worked in different circles and like knew of one another. Yeah. But he knew my journey, and he knew you know, what I was walking through. And by the end of that summer, he invited me to come onto his staff. And I'm still on staff at that church today. I'm an associate pastor there, and I love it. It's the best thing that I ever could have done. But in making that move, it was like dominoes. All of a sudden, all of these things that I struggled with and I cried over and I prayed over, of being like, Lord, what is it that you're calling me to do? What is it that what is my purpose in this life, right? You say I'm not an accident. Okay, then what am I here for?
Yeah.
Doors just started opening, and I began to just genuinely walk through one door after another after another. And I have developed this relationship with the Lord where, because of that experience of waiting too long until it was almost too late to obey him, that if a door opens, I'm going to walk through it. If it closes, then I know that that wasn't for me, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
But I'm no longer going to just wait and struggle. If he's opening a door, I'm going to walk in. And the scripture that I live by is Hebrews 10:38, that he takes no pleasure in the one who shrinks back. And I want so badly to bring pleasure to my Father. And if he is calling me to something, I have to be bold. I have to walk through that door. And if it closes, and trust me, so many doors have closed. Like, I have pinched fingers, I have busted nose. Like, I'll walk in and the door will be like, bam! But I walk away knowing that I wasn't disobedient.
Yeah.
That's good.
I put my foot in there. The Lord said, oh, no, not this one, sweetie. You're going to go in this direction. And I'm learning, even to this day, even after being a Christian for so many years, what it looks like to walk in obedience. And it's terrifying, but so, so, so worth it.
Yeah.
So worth it. And that's how I got to where I am today.
That was good.
Wow.
I think,
Spoke to me.
yeah, that's good. And I think it's like I said in the beginning, it's just because of the obedience. And even if, like how you said, even if I didn't have it all together, even if I had all these mistakes, even if I obviously in our human nature will always fall short, right? Even in that, like, God showed up, God restored you, God kept you, he's keeping your family, your kids, and I think it's such a beautiful testimony of what God could do when you just say yes to what he's calling you to, and being obedient, even though it might seem uncomfortable to get up and go. I think, like you said, like, even if you took a little bit longer to get there, but God said, it's okay, I got you. We're in this together. We're gonna get through this together. And even if there's mistakes along the way, I will still be there with you, and I will still show you grace, and I will still love you, and I'll still care for you. So I think that's so important. We appreciate you coming on and, like, sharing this life story with us. And I feel like we still didn't get, like, to go. We might need a part two.
We got like 5%
I feel like we got 5%
of
of what it is, but I think it was so important for us to show the Nicky behind the scenes, not just the Nicky, the director, right? Because I think it's important for people to understand that part where he doesn't already call you because you're qualified. Like, he qualifies you even if you feel like, how could he choose me? Right? Like, I think there's so many little moments, like, how could he choose me, knowing that I did all this stuff, or knowing this or knowing that. And then also the being in the leadership in a place where there's women that probably have a lot more of a trajectory with Jesus than you. But even in the Bible, it says, so don't let anyone look at you down because of your age, or, like, just stuff like that will constantly remind us, like, hey, like, I'm gonna tell God, well, I'm too young, and God is like, no, because in my Bible it says this. Oh, well, I don't know how to do this. Well, it's okay because it tells you this. And it said, well, I'm not qualified. Well, I qualified you. You know, I called you, and I'm gonna train you up, and I'm gonna give you the people around you to maybe help heal things in your life that needed healing, or to just help you, like you said, as you're pushing people, if you're pulling them up and into whatever God has called them to do. Like, I think that God did that with you first. with the people that he placed around your life, whether it was your mother-in-law or your youth leader, and just different people around. I think that he used all these moments so that when women come and say, "Why I can't do this," or "This is too much for me," or "You don't know what I've been through," or you wouldn't understand," you can say like, "Actually, I would, I went through that. I understand. I know what you're going through. Maybe it's not to the same extent, but you can get there. There is nothing that you could do that God won't restore, because he's a God of love. He's a God of restoration. He's a God of mercy. He's like, and so I think it's important that it was important for us to share this part of Nicky, the part of Nicky that is the background of how you got to this, so that in that it will encourage others that are maybe struggling with the idea of God can actually call me to something, or struggling with the idea of I will never be good enough to be in the position this person is. And I think that today this shows anybody, and it says like, no, you got this.
Yeah.
Like even if you screwed up yesterday, like, and you repent from it and you seek the help and you say like, hey, I want to move forward and I want to keep going. I don't want to change my life. I think this is a testament of what God could do if you just say yes, and if you literally turn your life around to follow him, and to say, all right, I don't know where we're going, but you're taking me, and I'm gonna be right here following wherever you go. And it's not saying you're not gonna have trials along the way, because the Bible doesn't say that. It says that even in the trials he'll be with us. So it doesn't say you're exempt from trials.
Yeah.
It says he'll be there regardless of it.
Yes.
And so I think that I'm just so grateful that you were able to share that with us, and honestly I'm like so inspired from this conversation. I don't know if you wanted to add anything before we close it out.
Thank you for sharing your story. I mean, I'm impacted. I know that the Lord is definitely speaking to us personally, I think, through your story. And so just thank you for being vulnerable and like sharing all that. I know that somebody's going to be impacted, and somebody is going to receive, even if it's like a little nugget. And the Lord's going to continue to use you. And, yeah, I'm so honored to be in the same room as you. Yeah.
Thank you.
So honored.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No,
So
thank you so much for having me. This has been, it's been an honor just to be able to share a little bit about what God has done in my life. And it's honestly like, it's hard to drill it all down in just a few sentences, but again, if I could just encourage anybody listening or watching that there's nothing that you have done or has been done to you that disqualifies you from a life of freedom in Christ.
that's good.
Absolutely nothing. Grasp onto Jesus. The hem of his garment, even just that little bit, will transform you.
That's good. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it.
We love
And
you.
we'll see you at camp.
Let's go.
Right?
Yes, we will.
Let's go. We'll see you. Thank you guys for joining us today. And stay tuned for the next one. Hopefully we get the Spanish SoCal
Yes,
Women's
we
Director
will.
to join our
Stay
pod.
tuned.
So just stay tuned. And if you want Nicky back for the continuation of the story, I think it'd be amazing to have her back. So
Part
just
two.
let us know part 2.
Yeah.
But we love you. God bless you. God bless you, Nicky. Thank you for being here. And we'll see you next time.